So yeah, we'll get going. So hi, I'm Marcus Pickens from Marlbo. I'm James Tidwell, and I thought if you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and what's brought you to Marlbo in New Zealand, that might be a good kick-off point. Then we can talk a bit further about some of the things you've seen and what you've been excited by. Might be a good thing.
Work for Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts, based out of Dallas, Texas. Work at the property there, and master sommelier. So
Yes.
do a lot of teaching. Sit on a couple of educational boards, or board of directors for educational groups. So education is a primary role for me.
Yes.
In that respect. And what brought me here is to be able to translate the place to people, whether it's servers in the restaurant, the hotel, other hotels other properties I consult for, or whether it's doing education.
Yeah, just on that education front, we were just quickly talking about some of that stuff. What are the important things for a new wine region to communicate to people selling wine? What do you think is key?
Well, I think certainly having a message that's consistent is important, and translating that sense of place, and that could be the story behind the winery, but it could also be a much larger sense of the culture, the people, the land, the weather. I mean, all of those things I think are important, but to translate something that speaks to the place is very important in almost all cases. I was speaking to someone earlier and saying that winemaking is a glamorous profession for much of the general public, and so they want to touch a little bit of that glamour.
Yes.
And being able to translate where the wine comes from and what makes it what it is allows people to do that.
What role do you think back labels? There's just something I noticed a few people looking at the back labels on wine bottles. What do you think? What role should they play in translating any of that, or should they go nowhere near that, or should they speak to the consumer or the educator?
I think they have a place, and I think they unfortunately get not misused, but perhaps mistranslated sometimes in that respect. And the joke in the industry is that all back labels for red wine say chocolate and cherries and goes well with grilled meats, and all white wines are crisp and clean or oaky and go with fish.
Yeah.
So I think getting beyond that to something about the actual place is important. Translate something about the place and where it comes from. Even if it's something that may not make complete sense to somebody, but captures their curiosity, makes them curious to learn a little bit more. Put it on the back label. What the wine goes with is probably important, but becomes cliche, I think, in some cases.
Yes. Better not comment on that myself, but I get your train of thought. Now, just in terms of what you've seen from Marlbo so far, what would your perception be of some of the wines that you've seen today?
Well, in the U.S., if there's one thing we know, it's Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc. I think anywhere in the world, if you know Marlborough wines, you know the Sauvignon Blanc. And certainly classic style. Marlborough took a grape that really had two classic regions and made a third. There was Bordeaux, there was Loire, and then there became Marlborough as a third classic style. So we know those. I think some of the wines that we're hearing about are Pinot Noir from New Zealand, but typically in the U.S. we hear about Central Otago first. Marlborough is somewhat second or slipped in there, but I will say that in tasting wines today, the Marlborough and Pinot Noirs were standouts. They really had a concentration to the wines that was a little more intense. They had character to them, which I always look for in wines. Something beyond just clean and fresh and fruity, but a little bit more to them and some complexity. They had all that and really impressed me. Sweet wines are impressing me in New Zealand, even though we haven't gotten to try that much. While they're not always economically viable and certainly are a niche product, I think they're a very important niche product, and I'd like to see more of them in the U.S. personally. I think the purity of fruit, the nice acidity, just really work well for dessert wines and classic style dessert wines.
Great. Thank you for those insights.
Sure.
Just one other question about trade. How what is a tip for selling wine to someone like yourself at a major hotel group? What does a small producer have to do to have a chance?
Wow, that's a big question. I don't know that there's a short answer to that. I can't say that one thing is going to capture my attention or sell me on a wine. I think, again, it goes back to the story, but not always the story of how the winery was founded or necessarily the story of the style of the wine. Maybe it's beyond that, because most people in the industry who have been around a while probably know major styles of wine. They've done some research on wine regions, and I think getting beyond that to intriguing tidbits, items that would make me curious about what really went into this wine and made it the way it is important. In the U.S., for our studies for becoming master sommeliers, we hear about many subregions of Marlbo, and what we're hearing now is that there are really two major ones that matter to the industry here, and there may be others, but there are two major ones. And really getting to sit down and see the difference in the styles of those two has been an eye-opener for me. So now if someone came to me and said, well, my wine comes from the Wyrau or my wine comes from the Altieri, I would know what that means.
Yeah.
And it would hook me a little bit, because I would be expecting a certain style of wine, and I'd be intrigued as to whether the wine delivered that.
Yep.
So I think translating that place, again, really is important for me. Whether that's important for everyone else, I'm not sure. I can only speak to what I think.
Well, thank you for your time and
You're welcome.
some insights. It's really much appreciated.
Well, thank you for having us here. It's been a great trip.
Yeah, we love to have our visitors here. Makes a difference.
Thank you.
Thank you.